Ah, so good to see you. I'm
How
starting
are
with
you
Geert
guys?
because, yeah, I'm starting with Geert because he's my best friend in the world. Geert and I, we had so much in common. We did so many projects in that small city in Antwerp. We did whatever was necessary to bring the designers in an international platform. Geert worked in their companies to help them to go to London to organize their shows. He organized the shows for the Academy of Fine Art where I was teaching. I mean, it's too long to say what we all did, and but it was fun. It was really fun, and we enjoyed every minute of it. We were also both retailers, and we learned a lot of retail and also about the system. And we were also traveling a lot to Paris and London and Florence, of course. So that was my little introduction to Geert, because he's my best friend. So it was a kind of,
Thank you, Linda. Thank
yeah,
you.
Thank you.
fantastic. And Kristofer is a complete different story. I was here in Manufactura. So Kristofer came to me and we were talking. We started talking for 2 hours, I guess, together with Massimiliano Giornetti. And it seemed like an old friendship, a friendship that I didn't saw for many years. So it was quite obvious that I was going to put you together. You bring people together, you bring ideas together, and you are also very efficient in bringing them out to the public. So I'm first wanted to know, Kristofer, about your Boon project, the agency, and before, of course, your little story, because you were a designer.
Well, yes, we all start
Yes,
somewhere, I guess.
yeah, we have to start
It's
somewhere.
when I started, you guys were already well far ahead, I would say. So what you guys have been living through and been part of, it's something that when I started in fashion, I was looking up to, and it was things that we looked at to learn from, and things we also kind of hope to repeat, I guess. But time has its way, and I think it doesn't really repeat itself, but it's moving forward. So we learn new things. I started went to fashion school, worked for different brands, and started my own brand. At the same time, I started Boon, kind of to create a community, to have a space to work and to have a business to support my brand. After some years, it was going okay, but I got caught up by the other side of the business, I would say. So I learned one thing is that when you want to do something, something you're passionate about, um, it's easy to lose track of it when you're trying to do several things to reach that point. And in my case, I think with time, I kind of discovered that I had passions for more things than just design. Uh, I slowly also brought in furniture design, objects, art, and so on to the business we have in Paris. And today it's become an agency which focus on international sales management for fashion, consulting, event management. We work with a lot of young brands, helping them to develop their collections, helping them to have a better understanding of the industry and how things work, helping them with production and so on. And also on the design side, it's more, we wanted to connect art, design, and fashion in a new way. I think all these industries are more and more interacting. I wouldn't say that we are as helpful as we are in fashion with design. We're not going in and necessarily consulting the designer. It's more of bringing them together. And now we're creating a new brand where we let the designers we work with from both fashion and from design come together and create editions for a brand, basically.
I think the big difference between your story and our story, Linda's and mine, is that the context has changed completely. We were much fewer players before than what we live now, and I think we also the society and commerce has evaluated much more to producing more, selling more, bringing it on a different way, while we were working in an era where fashion was quite new for the contemporary fashion was quite new for that moment, and designers started a fashion collection. It was easier somehow, because it was simpler, it was not so complex, and they could dream and believe in it without having all the dangers projecting on them beforehand. So it was easier to dream for success and to work on it than what it is now, I think. And, so that's a big difference, I think. And also, when I analyze what I have tried to do from the beginning until now, is we had stores, we did all this, showing these designers in London, afterwards in Paris, then working with the young designers in the academy. My drive has always been that when I discover something extraordinary, I want to show it to the people. Afterwards I analyzed that was the base of opening a store for me. I wanted to show the people what extraordinary thing I had discovered, and I wanted to share it with them. So I think this is a very back to jumping forward to today. I think this is a very contemporary idea that we have lost a little bit, I think.
Definitely. I think stores today don't necessarily know their clients anymore, which I think it's a huge disadvantage. It's almost sad because buyers, when they come to showroom and buy, the entire buying pattern has changed. It's become optimized and digitalized, and you follow algorithms. You don't buy for your end consumer anymore. I kind of experienced it when I started in fashion, when I was very, very young. When I was coming to Milan as an assistant buyer for a store in Norway, everything we bought, we had somebody in mind for that piece. And that we don't see anymore in the showroom in Paris. Very, very, very few buyers have that connection with their clients.
And afterward, people asked me often, why were you never strong online with e-commerce? And I didn't have an answer right away, but over time I realized that my biggest fun was starting a store, decorating the store, showing what I had found, presenting it well, trying to bring it to the customer who came in, sharing my enthusiasm for it. And that was the act of selling, which is something I never found on the internet, on the e-commerce. E-commerce is more for me about selling a product to a customer somewhere in the world on whatever moment of the day. So it's a different thing. That the act of playing a store, let's say, was the most important thing for me, as was the act of helping these young students in the academy, showing their collection to the public, helping to think, what's the essence? How can I bring it? How can I come to the point? How can I eliminate everything that disturbs? So it's a different approach of contemporary shopkeeping, I think.
Definitely. I see now we've been trying to figure out a way to how do we personalize and make the experience of e-commerce more connecting with the end consumer. And my kind of, end of the research, it's not really possible.
It's difficult.
And that's why I find, the physical space is so important, and especially now with the COVID, if you look at it from the showroom side as well, we get a fantastic chance to spend, video conference, spend time with buyers, learn about their problems, share, try and find new solutions. But the common ground for everyone is that in the end of the day, that physical experience we have meeting face to face, whether it's in the showroom or in the store with the client, it's necessary somehow. It's the only I would say, human way. We might sell and increase sales online, but it takes away, the pleasure of it all somehow. And we don't.
You cannot share emotion online, I think. In a classic e-commerce store, as we know it now, maybe there will be a new e-commerce store in the future, I don't know. But this exchange of emotion is missing for the moment, I think.
It definitely is. And if you can try to do the storytelling, you can land on a web page and it can be, a beautiful story about the product, about the designer behind it. But the issue is that your attention span lasts for 10 seconds and then you click into the product, so you don't really get the story. And then in the end, by research, it shows that, online stores, it functions better when it's just concentrated on products.
Yeah.
And then it takes away all the charm, basically.
Yeah.
Sadly.
So that's what, it's very interesting, all this. I love the evolution of what happens. But I think when I was reading the questions that Linda has sent us, that this is more a quest towards how will we be able, what will be the challenges for the future in what we do, Linda and you, Kristofer, and me, what will be the big challenges? And this COVID period is a very tough period for the world, and it's such a pity that so many people have to get sick and to die for it. But it's a very interesting period, I think, because it's really opening new doors, and it makes us things different on what we want, how we want it. Do we want all this? I think there is a big change coming, or we are part of that big change, I think.
I think a lot of the people I've been speaking with, especially when it comes on the creative side, fashion designer, furniture designers, and so on, have this need to try and slow things down. And by doing so, I think the period we've been have given people, time to reflect. Do I need to do 4 collections, 6 collections, 8 collections a year? Do I need all this product? But on the other hand, the big problem is more, it's connected to the retailers as well. How do we sell things? And in the beginning of the period, everybody wanted to slow down. And then as a result of how the industry kind of functions, they tried to, but then in the end of the day, they kind of continued in the same pattern. And I don't know if it's unconscious or if, it's just, you just ended up doing similar. People ended up doing pre-collections and resort collections and so on. So finding the balance, it's hard. And I think everyone kind of have to reach for a new path. You can't just have one player that wants to find it.
Yeah, of course. And we feel that the industry has, the last 20 years, the industry has taken over a lot. If you see the big fashion houses, if you go from fast fashion to luxury fashion, the industry has taken over a lot, and it has been producing more and more and more. Already a few years ago, I was walking with some fashion students in Paris, and we were in front of the Élysée in Paris on the Faubourg Saint-Honoré, and we walked through the Faubourg until the Palais Royal, past Colette, back in time, and so on. And so I said, imagine, what did we see now? And we were talking and thinking, I said, fashion stores, one next to the other. And every store trying to convince us they sell the best. We have to buy them, their stuff. I said, imagine all these are footwear stores, butchers, bakeries, whatever. We will have an indigestion on the moment we arrive here at Palais Royal already. I said, maybe there are more handbags for sale than there is people in Paris. You see? So
we
have, and urban life in many cities in the Western world have changed towards selling fashion. All these streets who before had little cafes, flower stores, bookstores, food stores, whatever, all have changed into fashion stores. And are we doing the right thing? I don't know. And this is the quest of all these questions that Linda sent us. Should we continue like this, or do we have to change? Yeah? And I think we have to. I'm convinced we have to change, but I don't have the answer how, of course. No one has the answer for the moment, I think, how. But we have some big challenges in front of us, I think.
I think, the industry has never been bigger in volume and in turnover and so on. And maybe one of the biggest issues is that the groups are just growing and growing and growing, and their need of profit is just growing and growing and growing. And there's less and less space for young brands. But what happens is that now also the young brands are starting to become part of the groups, at least the few that manages to kind of stick their heads through. And then you have different, programs, different types of prices and so on, which are now again also run by the big groups. It all kind of comes down to this very commercialized way of doing things, and it's very little room for independence left. How do we find that space? Is it by going places where luxury is not looking? Is it by going local? Is it?
I don't know. I try to, first of all, to change myself, to get rid of many references I had from the past. A shop has to be like this, a collection has to be like this, a creator has to be like this. I try to get rid of all these references, to free myself so that I can think on a white sheet of paper, create new. And then I try to bring this over to the people who ask me the question. Many young creative people ask me the question, what advice can you give us? And I said, try to think new, try not to attach to the system, try to be a rebellion, maybe. Try to use what we have, for instance, technology-wise, for the good. And because if you look at it very philosophically, we have, for instance, I'm talking to you here on my iPhone. Imagine it's future. It's the when I was a kid, we could never imagine we would ever do this. It's great. It's a fantastic thing, and we can talk, we can communicate, we can research, we can show, we can make pictures with it. We cannot yet cook on it, but we will maybe be able to cook on it in the future. But we have to realize that the clock ticks on the same way as thousands of years ago. The rain falls on the same way and for the same reason as thousands of years ago. And the animals move around, just exactly all the same. So we should only use we may not forget that these are tools that can help us forward and can make us richer in our mind and richer in our experiences. But we should not forget all these basic things of life, I think. And creative-wise, I think that's a very important one. We live now, I see also now a period of vintage. People buy vintage furniture, people buy vintage clothing. It's good because clothing has a second life with it and so on. But the interest goes to vintage. Dries opened his new store in Los Angeles recently. That's why I talk regularly to him, and he says, you know what department goes the best? It's the vintage part. His pieces from his old collections. When I talk to Raf, he says, when I do a stock sale, it goes better than my collection because it's vintage. So people are eager for the past somehow. And I think they're just eager for this simplicity, more simple way, more simple approach to fashion that we had in the past as we have it now. If they buy, for instance, a Supreme piece or a Prada piece or a Vuitton piece or whatever, they know they buy one small part of a big production. Why, if they go to a vintage store, there is one piece, you buy it or you miss it. That's the feeling it gives them. So maybe people are not, unconsciously, are not wanting to be part of that system anymore, I think.
I mean, I don't know. I think there's two sides to the story. I think a lot of, especially in fashion, we've seen more and more brands over the last decade that base most of their collections on vintage research. So maybe instead of just looking forward, maybe they try to add, sustainability, upcycling, biodegradable materials, had all these new things, technology, whether if it's, nanotechnology in the fabric, it can be so many different things. But when it comes to the shape of the clothes and print research and so on, most looks to the past. And one of the reasons of it, I think it's this constant need to create new things that you don't really have the time to create them, that people start, kind of, I wouldn't say in desperation necessarily, but they look at the references and you see fashion houses, renting from archives, renting vintage pieces. And instead of really, looking at them and redesigning and finding a new way, they're copying it straight off. And maybe this, becomes a thing that has become commercial in the way that when the consumer goes and look in the stores, they don't really see the difference of vintage and what's new anymore, because
but I saw the biggest evolution in clothing, in what we wear, of the last 20 years for me was in sportswear, sneakers, trainers, duvets, everything we wear to protect ourselves against nature, or to make us be able to move more freely, and so on, as well on material-wise as on shapes, and not referring to the past. So I think the essence of what we want to wear has moved, and we see it now with the pandemic as well. Everyone is wearing free clothes because we don't have to go to the office anymore. We are not allowed to travel or to go in the city to show ourselves anymore, or to a restaurant. So I think we should see fashion broader than only the big brands, the fashion brands or the luxury brands.
Definitely.
I think if I look at, we had to sell in the last years many fashion sneakers by big houses. It started with Prada, it ended with Balenciaga, sneakers that changed all the time and that were extremely expensive at the end. And then what I saw is that people moved towards sports sneakers, and these sports sneakers became more and more fashionable at very affordable prices. And they produce new styles every 2-3 weeks, let's say. And they were sold, they could sell them, or they can sell them. So I think we have to see fashion much broader. And if we look, because that was one of the questions of Linda, if we project this on the modernity of fashion, I think there is a lot of modernity in there already.
It is. I think, high fashion in a way it's become, before it was maybe the more innovative part. Now I think it's kind of the slower part. It looks at all the other types of fashion, whether it's sportswear or not. But the biggest change for me, I think that the marketing, suddenly everyone is targeting everybody.
Yeah.
So a good example, I went to a private sale for Flying Pieces, this sneaker brand, I think it's Dutch. And I didn't really know the brand, but I got an invitation and it was next to my office. And it's in a Parisian backyard, and there's a line of, I don't know, maybe 500 teenagers.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, this is really popular, And I was standing in the line. I was probably twice the age of the oldest person there. So they're like between 12 to 20 maybe.
It's amazing.
Pretty amazing. I was like standing there waiting, and then I started, listening to the conversation, and it's all these, sneaker collectors basically. And I've never really, I really love shoes, but I've never been into the collecting part of things. And I'm listening to these kids, and they're talking, reference numbers, but product numbers from Balenciaga and so on. But in their mind, all these luxury brands they're mentioning, and they know everything in detail, the materials, the product numbers, serial numbers, and so on. But in their mind, these are not fashion houses that make clothes, they're sneaker brands.
Yeah.
And when this machinery has managed to convince these teenagers, which should not, I would say, afford to buy these type of sneakers, that it's a sneaker brand and that it's something they need, you kind of stand there. I was like, wow, I'm breathless. And in the end, you know what? I couldn't be there anymore. I had to leave and kind of go back to the office. I was sitting reflecting, what's going on?
Yeah.
You know, it's not the same
Yeah.
way anymore.
No, no. But don't you think, Kristofer? I have sometimes this feeling that when I see all these big stores of the fast, what we call the fast fashion, Primark, Uniqlo, whatever. When I see all that, and then when I look back, did some research again on the latest fashion shows of Balenciaga and some other brands and so on, Gucci. I thought, this is such a separate world. We are talking on one side of clothes, on garments, what we will wear. And on the other side, we are talking almost about art or communication or theater or film or opera, as Gucci is now working with, for instance, Gus van Sant and so on. Interesting,
Exactly.
but I have little by little this feeling that fashion and fashion as on really the high creative level of fashion as we cherish, that this might have in the future a new meaning, a new identity, a new this will be it will have a new reason of life, and less to do or of what we will wear directly, that it will only be influencing the people who make clothes that we wear. You see?
Very, very possibly, yes.
So I think that's why I try to advise young designers to think more freely and to not only this shape-wise and material-wise, but also conceptual-wise. I try to advise and think out of the blue, try to rethink the reason of fashion. Why do we create fashion? Why do we create art? On one side, you can say we create art for the art business because there is a huge business in there just until before the pandemic. And otherwise, you have artists that make us think and make us change our mind and make us rebellion. Maybe artists that or rebellions like Paul McCartney or like Louise Bourgeois, what she did, and so on. So you have different roles for art, which you don't have yet for fashion. But I'm convinced this is the future for the creative part of fashion.
I truly hope so. I think, you know, for me, that's possibly one of the reasons I got into fashion to begin with.
Yeah.
And trying to find this reason in things, and it develops. Fashion is maybe not the most modern industry in the world. It's a creative industry based on the body. So it can't, you know, it's like how far can you take it? But then everything around us, as you're saying, it can really grow and it can become more personalized. And I think now people are thinking more concepts and genre, and it goes into more, you know, political movements as well than shape. I think, you know, one of the things I was talking to Linda some days ago, I really miss in fashion is volumes and shapes, maybe kind of the passé somehow, which we don't see anymore. And yesterday I was talking to a friend of mine which are specializing in, you know, 3D pattern making. I need to learn more about this. I need to test it. So all these new technologies brought together, and I think now there's more possibilities with them than ever before. But it's so much information, and every day we get this information, and I'm trying to kind of cope. How can we put all of this together and take the next step?
Because the industry of fashion has a lot of challenges. If we talk sustainability, I had a talk a year ago on sustainability in fashion, which is the biggest contradiction, I think. And I did some research, and I found that in 2015, textile was representing more than 50% of the amount of the dump in the state of New York. Imagine.
Oh, wow.
So, and I thought, how is this possible? And then a bit later, I was in the office of the Fashion Museum, and there is Diane, and I remarked that Diane is wearing new every day. And every week, really a completely new thing. So I said, Diane, you must have a huge collection of clothes. No, she says. I said, what do you do? I throw it away, she says. I said, huh? I buy at Primark. She says, it costs nothing. You see? So it's like a preservative. Buying, wearing, dumping. So this incredible challenge already, this little part already of the fashion chain is a very important part that we have to think about, I think.
I think at the pace that's going right now, there will be Primark and Zara on this earth way longer than there will be humans, basically.
Hell, guys, I have to interfere. We're in the surprise container, so surprise us not.
Okay.
Supreme and Zara, please don't do this to me.
Okay.
Can we find some new talent in unknown countries and unknown neighborhoods and unknown? Why are we always talking about Paris, London, Milan, or those? Come on, those days are over.
I agree.
Those days are over.
Very much so. I think also Paris, Milan, and London is kind of stuck in itself. I think one of the biggest jobs we do at Boon is talent research, talent scouting. And we're looking all over the world. And I think, for so many decades, people came to learn from France, from Italy, and so on for fashion. But we kind of learned everything we had to give. And now I think we need to look to very different communities to get something new here. And I think, we have great designers coming out of Africa, from Nigeria, from South Africa.
Absolutely.
We have great designer coming from Southeast Asia.
But I think it's not only fashion, it's in all creative disciplines that we have to look much broader, much more global. I see many interesting architecture items in all over the world, or design, or we talk design. It's amazing what happens for the moment. And I think it's normal that it happens like this. Only us or the industry should look more forward all this. I mean, we are, as Linda says, the industry is too restricted to what happens here. And you see it already in the art. The art is moving already. African artists, Mexican, Latin artists are being discovered, and so on. But and in kitchen, in restoration, in kitchen, it's amazing. All these exotic kitchens are hyped for the moment. We need to jump.
I don't agree. No? I see a lot of creativity.
But that's what I wanted to say, Linda.
What I think, what I am interested is looking at people I don't know. It's that new way of and maybe that surprise that we have to create, that we created in those early days in Antwerp was like a surprise. What's going on there? Maybe we can translate this in a new way of meeting people and talking to people.
Absolutely.
Did you ever I talked to Ting Zhang. I never met her, and we did the Zoom here, and she was fantastic, but so cute and so intelligent and so well.
Chinese? Is she Chinese?
Yes. So I'm discovering amazing people, and thanks to this, because one day I said, I step out.
Yeah.
This is what I was starting on China, for instance, is today, before we would go to London to look for extreme creativity and new things. Now, as a scout, we look to China. It's in China, it's happening. The technology, it's way beyond, and the amount of people that are doing incredible things spread all over China, it's incredible. It's really breathtaking. I think also how the culture is built, as it was so suppressed maybe for such a long time. And I'm not going to argue that it still is in many ways, but at least now it's creative freedom. And I think people that, get the opportunity maybe to come and study abroad, maybe they come to Florence, maybe they come to Paris, maybe they go to London, but they bring something, and they bring something back, and they mix it with their local identity.
Yeah.
And that identity was taboo until 5-6 years ago. You couldn't really have, collections and try and sell collection internationally if you were influenced by your local ethnicity. If you, let's say, I was working with a Vietnamese brand, and his collection is 100% based on Vietnamese culture. But he's managed to modernize it and take the references, and it's making some of the most beautiful creations I've seen in years. And I think you can go all around the world and you find these people that suddenly it's okay that you're not, what we are in Paris or in London.
Yeah.
You're creating something new, and they've passed us. It's, completely different level. And now we just have to, our job as a showroom, as curators, it's to make the people in the industry open their eyes for us as well and kind of embrace it.
Yeah.
And I think now it's becoming easier and easier to do so. And one of the core things of what we're doing at Boon is that we're a creative community. We work with, I think, almost 150 different talents from all over the world. And they all are extremely different, with completely different background, with completely different backing as well, which is something very important.
Yeah.
So managing to do things on different level with different resources, and then bringing it all together, and together, people discover things, they start communication like we're doing today, and we learn from each other.
Sure.
So we will be surprised in next year.
Yeah, Linda, but this is not so new. What you have done in the academy was a bit the same. You created a mixture of cultures in the academy, which was never seen before. On the moment you have left, there was more than 70% were foreigners from all over the world, we can say, from Russia, from China, from everywhere. So it already started there. And it's just that we may not forget to continue looking for that and developing with all the possibilities we have now.
I know that with Kristofer, we were talking that sometimes there is a lack of shapes. You came from the haute couture, la chambre, the haute couture. You studied the draping, and so that's also maybe true. But we have to go also to another live and body language.
Many people are not interested anymore.
No,
many people are not interested anymore. When I see the public that buys the big luxury brands here in Antwerp, for instance, it's mainly the young Arab community.
Yes.
You see? So, and all our customers that we used to have in the past who were fortunate enough to buy this even luxury fashion, they're not interested anymore. They say, no, we don't want this. For them, it's not even luxury anymore. And it's a big question mark as well. So I think we're all eager to discover new. We're all eager. And I like that's also a very nice thing that Dries has done in Los Angeles with his store, that he invites young artists, musicians, whatever, to perform in the store. And it's temporary. Someone paints on the wall and 2 weeks after it's painted over. You see, he says, go. There is people come in, you can turn your music if you want. You see, it's more like a clubhouse than a store. And I think we have to open our institutions more like clubhouses, so that people from all over the world, because young people, they don't like institutions. You see,
they want to interact.
Yes, that's what we want. We have to create to bring them in, to give them a podium, a platform. You see, we the older have to create the platform for these young entrepreneurs and young designers and young creatives, I think, with all our knowledge we have. And I think that's what Linda is doing. But I think that's the most interesting part. And that's what I like to do also, and stimulate them.
I think that we can stimulate and bring people together. I think it's fantastic. And I think both fashion and design has always been a bridge point for global awareness and how to learn culture, also politics, sexuality, and so on. Everything kind of comes together. And I think right now more than ever, the cultural aspect of things and how people are not going to maybe to the costume museum to see, you know, the diversity of culture, that it's coming into contemporary fashion and contemporary design as well. That's kind of the bridge point for me, that everything is really connecting now through art, through design, through fashion. And in Paris, we're trying to do the same thing. We're trying to create a community with all these artists from all over the world where they can come together and giving them a base where they're free. We have something we call Rooms By, where we try to have a monthly change. So we give one of the creators we work with a huge space and they can do whatever they want. And this way we can really enable and make more awareness and more visibility. Paris is still, you know, a global center somehow for creativity. And I think having outputs from all of these different countries all over the world in Paris, it's something really, really great.
So I thank you both, Geert. Thank you both, because I'm happy with what I heard. I heard that there is connecting a lot. I heard that there is looking for new people out of those fashion cities, systems and cities we know. And I think the surprise container is going to work, and it will be full of ideas and surprises. So thank you for the conversation.
We should stay in touch, Kristofer.
Thank you, Linda. Definitely.
We should stay in touch. It's interesting. Next time I come to Paris, I come to see you.
Okay? Wonderful. Looking forward to it.
Good. Thank you both for joining.
Thank you both so much.
The Container Project. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.